Hi, I'm Bruce Dorick, consultant and coach. And in this video, I want to lay out how I work with individuals and teams, and a little about the process that I use to help executives improve and produce great results for themselves and for their teams. I use the same basic model to coach individuals as I do teams because both need processes and routines. After a while, these processes and routines become rituals, and they help you stay on track and they help pull the team together. They take a lot of the ambiguity and the chaos out of the day-to-day fire hose of daily information. It's important to stay on top of your game. And part of my job is to slow down my client and get them to read and study what's important. I'm always reading and listening to books. There's some great books which have been incredibly helpful to me. And I like to share these with my clients and like to talk about them and get their feedback because everybody learns in different ways and coaching really is about learning. I believe it's important to coach the entire team. If you read $1 Trillion Coach, which is a great book, you'll know that Bill Campbell also did this. He would coach the entire team because there's a reason. It's the relationship that individuals have to each other that produces the results in the whole team. Now, when I get started, I always work with the CEO or the COO and get that sort of sponsorship level. But I also attend monthly meetings, and oftentimes I do the weekly OKR updates. I use the same simple model for individuals too, because I believe the most effective way to grow is through one-on-one coaching. Now, when I work with a client, I work with the entire client, their fitness level, their nutrition, their stress management, and I coach these because they all influence the results. We set up simple routines for exercise and relaxation and diet. Now, I use the S-curve to explain what happens when we're learning and growing. You know, when we start a new job or a new position after we're promoted, we're motivated and we're excited, and the motivation helps drive us up the learning curve. We learn quickly, but then it gets hard. The curve flattens out as the work becomes more difficult and the novelty wears off, and you just don't seem to make the same kind of progress and you start to get frustrated, but this is natural. I mean, if you're not ready for this can really be demotivated and zap you of energy. And when this happens, we start to blame. We either blame ourselves or we blame others, but we blame things outside of ourselves. We say things like, oh, the company is changing, or the industry has changed, or technology, or I never really wanted to do it in the first place. But often it's simply we don't know what to do, or we're not skilled. We feel clumsy and uncomfortable. We're not making progress. But this is how you're supposed to feel when you're learning. And as a coach, I'll help you go through this. A lot of CEOs think they don't need to learn anymore. Actually, they're just worried about looking bad. And I help them get through this because most of them really love learning and they get a lot out of it. But there's another situation when you hit that flat part of the curve, you can also start to blame yourselves. I know this is the way I go. You know, I blame my discipline or my lack of willpower, and I think it's my unique flaw that I have, and I think that's the reason I'm not successful. So I go to look for things like seminars, or I'll buy books, or I'll watch YouTube videos, and I'll get motivated. And I'll get motivated in an instant. But that wears off. This is not like skill. Skill doesn't wear off. You know, it's often that we simply haven't put in the time to develop the skill. So we get all hung up emotionally about this. We compare ourselves to other people. You know, we think it's easier for them. Everybody thinks the grass is always greener. And we discount the reasons we started in the first place. And the confirmation bias starts to kick in. And it confirms, you know what? You're not really good at this thing anyway, just like the other thing, and this is not the right thing for you. But the problem also exists that there's some really clever authors and consultants and coaches out there who will tell you that there's a smarter, easier way. You just got to change your mindset, change your paradigm, change your perspective. You need to transform. It's not about skill or practice or training. It's the law of attraction. And then they evoke the most important aphorism. The aphorism is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. And this is deadly because anyone that you know who's a master will tell you that this is exactly what they do, and they call it practice. And it's not easy, but it's important. And it doesn't show up on infomercials or on TV because it's not a quick fix that you can just buy for $19.95. Now, before I start working with somebody, I always do a personality assessment like the Hogan, which in my opinion is the very best that there is, but do your own research. I also use the Leadership Circle 360. And I start here. There's a number out there. I've spent years reading them and working through them, but I landed on the Hogan because Dr. Robert Hogan and his wife, both PhD researchers, are pioneers in this field. And what I like about what they do is they bring a critical thinking to the process. They bring solid research and internal, consistent, validated data, and they're always sort of tweaking it. I appreciate that they take the position that our behavior and our perceptions change all the time. We're not always the same way like Myers-Briggs wants us to believe. Sometimes I'm feeling good and I behave in certain ways and I have certain tendencies. And there's sometimes when I'm not at my best. I'm tired, I've been traveling, or I'm upset about something, and I'll behave differently this way. And Hogan Assessments accounts for this kind of thing. Now, really what's important is that you learn one of these assessment methodologies thoroughly and you use it only as a way to validate your instincts and your experience. You got to put in the time to really get to know people before you use those assessments as a way to make sort of broad brush statements about them. Now, when I work with an executive, I meet with them once a month in person at their location. We spend a couple hours together in the morning, and then I spend the rest of the day following them around into meetings, watching how they perform in side conversations, watching them in small meetings, large meetings, to get a better understanding of their real style and their effectiveness. I want to get to really know them so that I can help them in the best way that I can. After that, I have frequent conversations, frequent communications. I have oftentimes set up a weekly call, but most often we do daily or every other day text messages or just short conversations to stay connected. What's important is frequent communication, staying on top of things with them, not just one call a month.